February 14th, 2020 was one of the most important days of my life. No, it absolutely wasn't Valentine's Day because I don't give a shit about materialism. What I'm actually referring to is the 2020 live-action film adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog, and not the awesome 2-episode original video animation that was released in 1996 during the era that SEGA was promoting the Sega Dreamcast with the release of Sonic Adventure. On a side note, I highly suggest anybody out there to see that movie before and after this particular Sonic movie. Before this movie was finished and released, I was absolutely skeptical about it, because there's a certain limitation for licensed video game film adaptations until it's clear whoever was responsible never knew what the fuck they were doing. I have literally seen one too many fucking shitty attempts at video game movies. And I'm here to say that once again, someone with horrific bowel movement decided to take a huge shit on another licensed property and somehow thought that serving this foul-ass motherfucker on a large platter steaming hot was a good idea. The moment that I saw the first trailer for this movie, I knew that the premise wouldn't make any goddamn sense when I saw the final product. Because this entire premise is following Sonic and James Marston on their super elongated and annoying road trip to San Fuckholeville to find these magical small teleportation rings that Sonic lost, while entirely trying to evade Dr. Robotnik, who's entirely hell-bent on trying to kill Sonic, and whoever the fuck else stands in his way. All of this bullshit started because Sonic caused a global power outage while running in fucking circles like an idiot on a baseball field. During the process, somehow conducting a fuckload of electricity, which I must add would have never been fucking missed by NASA, or whoever overseas probably has the right fucking technology, and irresponsibly leaves evidence that's found by Dr. Robotnik, which then leads into an elongated and pointless cat and mouse game. The first problem is that Sonic can teleport through the rings. The rings are only for Sonic's health. The rings collected in Sonic the Hedgehog are neither for teleportation or instantly gives him superpowers. You could only teleport through checkpoints when you obtain a certain amount of rings. I know that this could be debated because there are big rings in the Sonic universe that allow Sonic to teleport somewhere, but those are mostly for special stages that furthermore allow him to collect Chaos Emeralds or play arcade games and other shit. I also know that some people may talk about the fact that when Sonic collects a certain amount of rings, he turns yellow. But that shit was mostly introduced in Sonic 2 when he collects all of the Chaos Emeralds, and thus allowing players to collect 50 rings and being able to actually transform into that shit. I understand that there's some people out there that would completely ignore that and accept that logic for this film. But it's the small details that count. You can't just make us believe that the rings do that when we've already played the fucking games and realized that was bullshit. This fucking movie hasn't even gotten to the damn first scene with James Marston, and it's already greatly insulting my fucking intelligence. Who the fuck were they marketing this movie to? First of all, who the fuck is this owl? I don't know who this bitch is. I don't know why the fuck she's guarding Sonic, and I don't give a shit that she's fucking dead. I'm glad that bitch is dead. We don't have enough context about who the fuck she is, and furthermore, it still wouldn't make any sense because none of this shit happened in Sonic's history, especially since that the only fucking owl that I remember was from the 1996 original video animation with a character named Old Man Owl. Yes, I'm also aware that there's other owl characters in the franchise, as well as other animal characters in the franchise, but I'm specifically going over one that actually had a voice and purpose in the story. Obviously, by the name, Old Man Owl is not a fucking female, and sure as hell wasn't Sonic's guardian. Because if you watch the 1996 original video animation, you'll come to the realization that he's merely a side character utilized as comic relief as well as other shit, but still served an integral importance to the story. Whoever this bitch is obviously wasn't, because by the time that she died, I didn't shed a fucking tear. However, this character's death brings so many important questions, because her death is handled at the hands of the Echidna tribe. Is this movie seriously trying to convince me that the Echidna tribe are a bunch of brainless fucking savages who would kill anybody that they see as a threat without the damn Chaos Emeralds being a factor? Which I must add is already fucking weird, because they would have never attacked, let alone killed somebody, unless it was related to the Chaos Emeralds. Specifically, the Master Emerald, which actually connects them together. I know that I'm not fucking crazy when I say that I knew that I saw Knuckles there too. We're never told what the hell happened before this character's death. Sonic entirely escapes unscathed, but the bitch in the back that's presumed to be Sonic's guardian angel is brutally murdered by a group of people who obviously must have had something against her, but we never know because the movie never shows us. And no, don't tell me that they had a motive, because the writers of this movie gave them no fucking realistic motive. According to the writers of this movie, for some fucking stupid reason, decided to confuse Sonic for a fucking Mortal Kombat character by having him go full Raiden in this damn movie by conducting electricity that fucks everything up for everybody in the Green Hill Zone. And potentially elsewhere. Yeah, despite the fact that Sonic is channeling static shock on a fuckload of high voltage and could literally run faster than the speed of light, these bloodthirsty bastards are totally hell-bent to somehow successfully abduct Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm not apologizing for saying this, but that's a really stupid fucking idea, considering the fact that they're fucking with electricity. If Sonic is conducting electricity, I don't think that it's going to end well for anybody that decides to awaken him. Especially if his powers are capable of knocking out the whole goddamn power grid. Another reason why about half of this movie doesn't make any goddamn sense is because the Chaos Emeralds are entirely excluded from this movie. I don't give a fuck how much money it would have costed them to put the Chaos Emeralds in this movie. Because if they were creative, it probably wouldn't have cost them much. Because I would have fucking preferred them putting the Chaos Emeralds as a very integral subplot in this movie, opposed to being entirely excluded or savored for whatever fucking installment they want to do next. Which I'd also prefer that they didn't, considering how much of a shit show this bullshit was. One of the major reasons why the Chaos Emeralds are very important to the story isn't just because of the fact in the original games they serve a greater importance already, but also because it would have given more context to the shit happening at the beginning with Sonic's origins. But also because they were very integral to the first game's story. If you never completed the first Sonic game by collecting all of the Chaos Emeralds before defeating Dr. Robotnik at the end, then unfortunately not only did you not receive the true ending, then you've also missed the point of their existence. The first game established that Dr. Robotnik couldn't be closer to those emeralds because he had nothing but malicious intent. Simply put, if Dr. Robotnik got his hands on those emeralds, everyone and everything were totally fucked. So it was definitely up to Sonic and whoever else to find those emeralds before he did. If the movie actually gave a shit about Sonic's world more, and we got to the part about the Chaos Emeralds, it at least would have made things more tense, as well as giving the other shit more context. At least if these stupid bastards introduced the Chaos Emeralds, I would have been a little more forgiving. But because it's entirely excluded from the movie, I couldn't help myself but stare at the screen, realizing that they just fucked up a very great idea because of their massive incompetence. If you're going to fuck with the history of Sonic, at least know what the fuck it is first. I'm not going to lie saying that I wasn't intrigued by the plot, but the concept itself could still be challenged. Because the most noticeable thing that happens is that Sonic is no longer in his universe. He's transported to the human universe, where he starts interacting with humans, as well as Dr. Robotnik himself. The thing that makes this very conflicting is that Dr. Robotnik actually exists in Sonic's universe. So it really wouldn't make any fucking difference where Sonic was, because Dr. Robotnik would still fucking be there. Because even in Sonic Adventure, in Station Square of all fucking places, Dr. Eggman is still wreaking havoc with his gigantic fucking ship, the Egg Carrier, which I must add was more threatening to this day than anything that he did in this movie. At default. But okay, this is an entirely original plot to Sonic the Hedgehog. It's entirely ignoring the video games in terms of how the original story was told. So we're supposed to go by the logic that Sonic was transported to another universe with his own fucking rings, with Dr. Eggman deliberately being hired to kill him. Dr. Eggman has been hired to assassinate Sonic the Hedgehog, not because Dr. Eggman fucking wants to do it on his own fucking terms, like he did in the original goddamn video games, while during all that shit, kidnapping animals to turn them into robots, as well as fucking up the entire environment, but because a bunch of morons don't know how to fucking properly communicate with a hybrid animal that can speak English. Apparently, they can't fucking talk to Sonic about this, like James Marsden's character, to learn not only is Sonic not actually a threat, and appreciates the human world, and or wants to go the fuck home. I know that this is an entirely different plot, taking elements from the original games while throwing a huge spin on it. But once you analyze how and why Sonic appears in the human world, in addition to why Sonic has people after him, in addition to why in the hell James Marsden has no other fucking choice but to assist Sonic the Hedgehog for some fucking reason, not only do you realize how it could have easily been resolved numerous times, but the whole damn premise falls apart. All of this shit that's happening, with shit being destroyed, people getting hurt, and all of this other unnecessary shit happening all at once, trying to poorly emulate anything that happened in Sonic Adventure and so on, doesn't have any logical reasoning at all. Sonic doesn't know when to sit down and shut the fuck up. James Marsden's biggest mistake in this movie is assisting Sonic without realizing that he should be taking advantage of him. He should have silenced Sonic many times, but Sonic deliberately stirs more attention. It's obvious that somebody is going to draw attention when they have some little blue humanoid motherfucker following them around. It's not fucking rocket science that if you're seen with Sonic the Hedgehog, you're probably going to garner attention from somebody, especially if you're in a fucking crowded place. At every opportunity that Sonic gets, especially when James Marsden stupidly gives him the advantage, Sonic is leaving evidence. It doesn't matter where James takes Sonic, or if by any chance Sonic is given any wacky disguises. Because regardless where they are, Robotnik somehow manages to find them, and other spectators notice. If Sonic isn't destroying property belonging to Robotnik, he's destroying property belonging to other people and businesses, as well as fucking vandalizing and stealing. On top of all of that shit, despite the amount of people living where Sonic is invading, despite all of these people who probably have cell phones and daily roam in public, have never taken the time to find Sonic. It's not until that fucking power surge and Dr. Robotnik is alerted to put himself out there on fucking watch that anybody really gives a shit about Sonic. In some parts of the movie, Sonic actually teleports through different areas. I can see how this would be interesting if that were the case in the original games, but since we're going by new logic for some reason, it still reinforces what I said about there being other ways to resolve whatever the hell is happening with him. There's a lot of risk factors that are involved with Sonic dealing with this ring, because there's many advantages that anybody, including Dr. Robotnik, would have if this fell into their fucking hands. Especially if this ring got into the wrong hands, this could be very useful. Sonic could have easily teleported himself somewhere so he couldn't be found by anybody. But at no point does he decide to do that. He might decide to help other people during the most convenient situations, especially if it means putting them in complete fucking danger. But at no point does he ever think to himself that it would be a good idea to stay the fuck out of contact. I think it would be very wise if Sonic knew anybody was out to kill him to not be on the fucking radar. James Marsden's character is so important in this story because he's the only one that actually gives a shit about what's going on. It's obvious that a total madman is on the loose, but apparently more than enough fucking morons decided that it would be a smart idea to hire a fucking mad scientist who doesn't give a shit about the climate or society to kill one seemingly hybrid individual. These dumb motherfuckers knew that this was a bad idea, but decided to do it anyway because apparently they couldn't stop Sonic. But Sonic is not even a threat to begin with. Sonic was always known to be a hero in the franchise. Sonic is the only one who's actually making the effort to save anybody. And this is heavily fucking addressed in Sonic Adventure. This movie should have done more fucking justice for itself by taking notes from Sonic Adventure. Because at least in Sonic Adventure, the humans actually understand why Sonic is facing Robotnik and why nobody would actually be stupid enough to fuck with him. If the movie was written through a different perspective, Sonic would be the villain, and then I could understand. But in this movie, since Sonic is primarily the protagonist, as he always was, and Robotnik is still the main villain, it doesn't make sense to hire him. It doesn't make sense to use him as a last resort. In a comical context, it's funny, but it's also stupid, because Robotnik could clearly do this himself. He doesn't need anybody's approval to capture and kill Sonic for experimentation. This is entirely something that he was doing on his own by deliberately kidnapping animals and converting them into robots. Sonic's relationship with James Marsden in this movie is fucking weird. And I know that some people could debate that, because obviously there's heartfelt moments in the movie. But these heartfelt moments feel like they're so goddamn obvious. They try to paint Sonic as a lonely person, while at the same time making him more irritating, which under no fucking circumstances helps at all. But if that wasn't enough, the context is that they're seemingly long-lost soulmates. And I don't mean that in a romantic manner. I'm referring to the fact that Sonic and James Marsden in this movie are consistently together. And having these conversations, especially during seemingly heartfelt moments, that implies that somehow before they've met, fate somehow already predetermined their zany relationship. The majority of the time that they're together, it's like James is doing everything entirely unwillingly, despite the fact that he's aware that his life is at risk because he's around this hedgehog. Although it might seem like James is deliberately trying to be calm, especially when he's being interrogated and other seemingly important people are in his life being mixed with all this crazy shit. If you strip away all of that and analyze his body language, it's like he's trying to restrain himself so badly not to kick Sonic in his goddamn throat. This movie is seriously trying to convince me that James Marsden and Sonic the Hedgehog are supposed to be friends, in the same context as Chris Thorndike from Sonic X was Sonic's friend. Except the major difference here is that I actually believed that Chris Thorndike and Sonic the Hedgehog were friends. Not only did we have enough time between Sonic and Chris, but Chris never seemed like he wanted to slap the shit out of Sonic the same way I wanted to. There's also yet another strange but irrational subplot in this movie involving James Marsden that I believe should have ended differently considering the vast circumstances. But in order to give this more context, I do need to explain a bit more about Dr. Robotnik and Sonic's involvement in this, because this is essentially their fucking fault. For some reason, despite never actually doing anything wrong in the movie, at any fucking point, Tom is considered a domestic terrorist. Just because Dr. Robotnik got knocked the fuck out by Tom after Sonic distracts Dr. Robotnik, once Sonic realized that Dr. Robotnik was about to have his way with Tom utilizing Sonic's electric fur. I'm aware that Sonic is on the fucking watch list just because he caused a global power outage. I'm aware that there's certain people remaining entirely skeptical about Sonic. But just because Tom is assisting Sonic, potentially unwillingly because he didn't deserve this at all, doesn't mean that he should have been labeled a terrorist. There's nothing that Tom does at any point that would have him considered a goddamn terrorist. Sonic may fit that criteria to an extent, but he's not intentionally fucking with anybody. Dr. Robotnik, on the other hand, is fucking with everybody, intentionally utilizing dangerous technology to destroy shit, and doesn't give a single fuck about casualties. This whole goddamn subplot was fucking stupid because at no point did Tom receive consequences. Not even from government officials. Nobody realizes who Tom is, despite the fact that his face is plastered everywhere and makes the fucking effort to stop him. Even when they thrive to San Francisco. At no fucking point are they pulled over by the fucking police or any fucking bystander takes notices and action. Even when he deliberately shows his ID while being seen in public in a fucking building where cameras are everywhere. Not just one time in person, but also over the fucking phone. Not even the fucking army shows up for this shit. Even before and after Tom is warped home and Dr. Robotnik has been publicly humiliated and defeated by Sonic, does anything fucking come out of this by anybody questioning it? Except later, somehow Tom is completely dismissed from this because they've somehow stopped fucking searching for Sonic despite blatant evidence being everywhere, and also because a whole fucking goddamn army was in the movie earlier upon meeting Robotnik and didn't make the effort to do shit about it! Obviously, the writers of this movie didn't see the movie Enemy of the State, because otherwise, this shit would have ended differently with Tom, especially if the Men in Black were involved. If anything involved, especially extraterrestrials, that had somebody such as Dr. Robotnik trying to fucking murder whatever the fuck it is, I don't think that Tom would get out of this entirely unscathed. Especially his girlfriend that should have stayed the fuck home with her fucking annoying sister, who also should have fucking had a horrible death in this movie. That stupid, big, fat, useless, pesky bitch was fucking annoying too. God damn it. I'm not saying that I hated James Marsden's character, but Tom ultimately had no purpose in this movie. Everything that Tom did in this movie was convenient. He didn't have to assist Sonic, but Sonic is so fucking annoying and stalked the hell out of him that he didn't have any other choice. He could have turned Sonic in, but that would have made him a villain, and furthermore would have wasted the entire premise, despite the premise already not making any fucking sense. I actually had sympathy for Tom, because Tom had a simple job. He was the only sheriff in his community that went out of his way to do everything for everybody and everything. He didn't give a fuck if it were animals or humans. He was very helpful. He's got a great home, respect and love from his community, a sexy and supportive wife who's willing to bend down and spread that beautiful round chocolate ass right in front of him anytime he wants when she's naked, including a lisping ride or die guy by his side anytime he needs backup. On top of that, finally being accepted to the San Francisco Police Department. But all of that gets fucked up, because then he's introduced to Sonic the Lonely Hedgehog, super irresponsible and clumsy fucking dumbass. This motherfucking movie hasn't reached its end credits yet. And somehow it managed to make me hate Sonic with a burning passion. I can't believe that I'm saying this, but this movie absolutely made me fucking hate the very one character that I have never spoken ill of in my life until I saw this retarded bullshit. I hated Sonic so much in this fucking movie that I wanted him to die. I wanted Sonic the Hedgehog to die in the most agonizing fucking way possible. I wanted Dr. Robotnik to kill this little blue annoying motherfucker. Whoever the fuck is responsible for this characterization of Sonic. Sonic is constantly switching from acting like he's racing Tony Montana and Speedy Gonzales in a goddamn cocaine snorting contest, because about half of the time when he's having an ADHD breakdown, talking over 9,000 fucking words per second, telling non-stop mediocre puns and jokes, he's very fucking obnoxious. I don't understand what the damn purpose was to make Sonic talk like this. Sonic never fucking spoke like this in any of the games. Even in the original television shows, he was never talking like this. I understand that Sonic is constantly supposed to be fast, but that's only when he's running. Sonic doesn't need to speak like he's in a fucking mental asylum. It was like some motherfucker thought that in post-production, Sonic's audio should be edited so he sounds like a goddamn auctioneer. Another thing that bothered me about Sonic was actually about something that happened before this movie was released. Before Sonic got his actual appearance, there were advertisements that showed Sonic looking like absolute shit. And when people realized that he looked like this, it forced them into completely redesigning him. Which is very fucking weird, because I don't understand what made them want him to look like this anyway. What the fuck was the matter with you? I'm not bullshitting when I say that it didn't take long for me to instantly dislike this Sonic. Because even in his original form, he looked very fucking annoying. I really couldn't understand or accept how or why they managed to fuck up Sonic's appearance the first time. Because unlike the Sonic in this particular installment in the franchise, Sonic at default never acted, appeared, or sounded like a fucking moron. They proclaimed that they wanted Sonic to have a more humanoid appearance. But obviously that backfired because nobody, including myself, liked that fucking monstrosity. I had to replay that trailer multiple times to realize what the fuck I was looking at. I never thought for a moment that I wanted to kill Sonic the moment that I saw him until I saw his original design. But it doesn't stop there. These bastards do something with Sonic in this movie that had me silent for an entire minute to think about what I just witnessed. I'm not saying that the Sonic franchise is new to weird shit, but Sonic decides to deliberately show everybody with physical and vocal evidence that he's a desperate, lonely stalker. I played many of the Sonic games and watched many of the television shows. And not once did I ever get this idea that Sonic needs to fucking remind everybody about how lonely he is, despite the fact that that never actually fucking happened any time, along with outright admitting that he stalks people by standing outside their fucking house like a goddamn peeping Tom, or in some cases, already knowing where the fuck they are and staying there before and after they leave and follow them, constantly pretending that he's involved with their life and being absolutely aware that nobody knows shit about this or about each other. Sonic is aware that they're not aware of his presence. But this little pesky bastard is constantly invading people's private space. The way that he does it isn't fucking cute. Sonic is textbook stalking without fucking digital footprints. At one point, I was expecting for Sonic to break into James Marsden's house and fuck him right in front of his goddamn girlfriend. Because that's all he ever talks about in this movie. Which is already fucking weird enough because he's not even fucking aware that Sonic exists. At least not until it becomes very convenient to the plot. I don't understand what it is with Sonic being so fucking infatuated with James Marsden, but for some reason, he's constantly riding Cyclops' dick. Despite the fact that Cyclops doesn't know anything about this little annoying bastard. Here's also something else following that. Why is the movie trying to make Sonic lonely when it's obvious that he's got friends already? The movie is purposely trying to make Sonic seem like he's too lonely and depressed, and intentionally causing vast environmental damage when he has panic attacks. Every time Sonic knows that he's alone, he starts doing shit that would become immediately questionable if it were a human. Which in his case really doesn't make a difference considering that he's a hybrid. But Sonic's dangerously hyperactive and eccentric behavior is the whole fucking reason this premise happens. Sonic doesn't give a shit if he's alone. But he also knows that he has friends. Sonic is capable to handle solitude, while also being accompanied by his allies whenever possible. Especially if Dr. Robotnik is wrecking havoc everywhere. Or whoever the fuck else is doing it. This doesn't make any goddamn sense. Who the fuck wrote this character? What intern thought this was a good idea? Obviously they didn't know shit about Sonic because I never recalled him doing any of this. Why in the fuck is Sonic conducting electricity in this movie? What the fuck made them want to do that to this character? This never happened in any of the previous media. And I'm not ignoring the fact that this literally made Sonic more dangerous than he would have been if he had all of the Chaos Emeralds and turned into Super Sonic. This mysterious new ability that they gave Sonic is ridiculous. Because Sonic conducting electricity is the only reason why all of this shit is happening to him. This whole damn movie is about Sonic being incapable to control himself, while people who are obviously alienated with this knowledge beyond repair attempt to stop him. I'm somehow expected to care about Sonic's ordeals, but he's not making it easier, being completely fucking irritating, and also intentionally bringing attention to himself. How the fuck am I supposed to be sympathetic towards Sonic if in addition to him being fucking annoying, he's also extremely reckless? The movie never gives itself enough time to explore this subplot. It never tells us anything about how Sonic got these powers and what more could have come out of this if he started abusing it. If the movie spent more time showing how lonely Sonic was and how badly people were treating him, not only would that shit would have helped the entire lonely subplot, at least to the extent of not feeling entirely annoyed by him and thus more understanding why he's so fucking kooky, but also because of the fact that it would have made more sense for him to fucking use this shit all the time. But since there's so many missing, misused, and useless elements in the movie, the excuses made by writers and whoever else became immediately invalid. I refuse to accept and defend anything Sonic did in this goddamn movie. Because even the crippled Professor Xavier would assure this little motherfucker was on lockdown. Another thing that bothered me is the fact that Sonic is a confirmed extraterrestrial in this movie. What the fuck? What the fuck? But if that's the case, don't you think that the Men in Black would be great candidates to figure this shit out too? The movie highly focuses on government officials trying to stop Sonic, in addition to figuring out who and what the fuck he is. But no, they decide that they're going to do something else in the movie involving Dr. Robotnik because apparently they couldn't fucking do it themselves by having hordes of army members fighting this fucker. I don't recall Sonic the Hedgehog ever being considered an alien in the franchise. It could be highly debated because Sonic does share a hybrid figure and looks like a cartoon character from fucking Looney Tunes dragged out of his own world into the human universe in the same manner as Cool World. I'm very aware that he speaks English and could stir attention because he's walking on both of his toothpick legs. But if Sonic is an alien in this movie, wouldn't it be wiser to have other emergency methods just in case Dr. Robotnik did— Fuck it, I'll explain later. But Sonic is not the only person that bothers the fuck out of me in this movie. It's also the other characters. Most notably Dr. Robotnik, also known as Eggman. This is going to be a bit difficult to explain, because just like Sonic, I've seen variations of Eggman. They have two different personalities that are portrayed in different media. It's them being comical and very fucking serious. The problem is that this has such a fucking identity crisis on the series. I get that Sonic is supposed to be lighthearted at times. I've seen this before. One too many fucking times. But Sonic does not work when the whole fucking time consists of them acting like fucking buffoons. Because this bumbling, sinister, morbidly obese bastard remains pivotal to the franchise. But before this shit goes down, I want to give credit to Jim Carrey because it's fucking owed to this person. Jim Carrey deserves my respect. I admire Jim Carrey. I understand that some people do not like his style of humor. I know that he's been acting like a bumbling motherfucker all his fucking career. But I appreciate that. I appreciate his skill and work ethic. I appreciate his devotion and sacrifices. I appreciate Jim Carrey from the day that he began to the day that he has stopped. With that being said, Dr. Robotnik in this fucking movie was a goofy pussy-ass bitch. This motherfucker was so goofy that he made Robotnik from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog seem more goddamn intimidating. I admire the fact that they decided to make Dr. Robotnik an individual who doesn't give a single fuck about who he's fucking with, but there comes a point where character development is in questioning. As Sonic in this movie, he suffers from a goddamn identity crisis because he switches from being very menacing to a complete fucking moron. Dr. Robotnik having stupid moments when it feels natural is fine, but having him prance around like he's in a fucking cartoon is ridiculous. And don't tell me that Sonic the Hedgehog is merely an exaggerated cartoon. There's a lot more depth to the story and characters than some people would expect to believe. This interpretation of Dr. Eggman was fucking embarrassing. This scrawny ass motherfucker isn't anything close to being as terrifying as the original Dr. Robotnik. Jim Carrey as Dr. Eggman in this movie was like Ace Ventura trying to fucking cosplay Dr. Robotnik. But the physique that he embodied was like he succeeded Christian Bale's weight loss diet. When I think of Dr. Robotnik, I don't think about Jim Carrey. I'm not thinking about some fucking supermodel. I'm not thinking about some anorexic Christian Bale. I'm thinking about somebody who's probably headed to every fucking fast food restaurant in town and ate every goddamn morsel in sight until he has sent the whole fucking country into famine. Who the fuck are you trying to fool, bitch? I've known this franchise longer than you fuckers had the opportunity to carry the damn license. There's been many interpretations of Eggman with different actors. But one of the most notable actors that to this day I consider the definitive Dr. Robotnik is Dean Bristow. This man's legacy should be remembered forever because he defined Dr. Robotnik's voice. He defined Dr. Robotnik. Again, I know that there's been different interpretations and voice actors, but Dean pulled a fucking miracle for this character. If you've never played Sonic Adventure, get on that shit and then compare it to Jim Carrey's. And then you'll finally understand why Dr. Robotnik works better as a more menacing character, opposed to some fucking unhinged, flamboyant, scrawny-ass, retarded fucking goofball with a trim 1970s porn star mustache and looks like he's done a fuckload of heroin. Speaking of characters having and being sidekicks, 2020 movie Robotnik has a sidekick also. But this sidekick is not the ones that real Sonic fans deserved or expected in this damn movie. Robotnik has a sidekick in this movie named Agent Stone. And Agent Stone should have pulled out his gun and shot Robotnik in his fucking head. Because the entire time that Agent Stone is with Robotnik, obviously because it's his job, he gets treated like shit. I know that it's not uncommon for expendable people to work for evil people and still be mistreated. But this is something that was addressed in the first Austin Powers movie. What I'm saying is that Dr. Robotnik is heavily relying on a human character to do whatever he fucking says, while during all that shit expecting him to remain silent, despite all of the verbal harassment that is happening. Dr. Robotnik treats everybody like shit in this movie, which is fine. It's great to his character. It adds more depth to his sinister personality. But the problem here is that he's relying on humans for whatever reason while trying to assassinate Sonic. Instead of doing this on his own terms, he's hired to do this. And for some reason, he has a human counterpart following him. The original Dr. Robotnik would have never fucking done this. The original Robotnik would have never had a human character with him unless he held them as a hostage. Which is exactly that happened more than once. Especially in the 1996 original video animation. Because in that movie, he takes the president's daughter and has more sinister plans ahead. Some of which that today would be considered highly inappropriate for a Sonic game. But Sonic was made in Japan, and the word inappropriate doesn't exactly mean something bad in their context. I don't like the idea of a human character following Robotnik because it's obvious that Robotnik doesn't like them anyway. Robotnik would have been better with his henchbots, especially the two major bumbling ones from the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I think with these two fucking buffoons, it would have been a better idea, so despite failing every mission they encounter, they'd still follow Robotnik's orders despite how ridiculous and implausible they could be. The other important reason why I think this would have been a great idea, aside the fact that it would have been nice to see Robotnik's henchbots do something meaningful in live action form, but also because somehow Agent Stone fucking vanishes halfway through this movie, never to be heard or seen from again. I'm not saying that I cared about Agent Stone, but what I am saying is that at least giving him closure would have been nice, because instead of being treated like shit throughout half of the movie and somehow mysteriously fucking vanishing before the climax doesn't make any sense, it just makes his entire purpose in the movie pointless, much like everything else. When I was making comparisons earlier, I had a damn good reason for it. And this especially applies to the story, because Sonic Adventure and Sonic CD greatly established why the hectic rivalry between Sonic and Robotnik should be taken more seriously. That also applies to how their personalities are, which are greatly distinguished in a very intriguing manner. Sonic Adventure introduces some very interesting information, and some of it involves the fact that Sonic interacts with humans. None of the humans in the story fuck with Sonic. They actually trust him. They never feel threatened by Sonic. Even while all this shit is going on, they're completely aware that he's their hero. That especially applies to the motherfucking police, because at the beginning of this game, Sonic saves their lives. They don't shoot first when they see Sonic, because there's actually a bigger threat in the fucking story. Much bigger than Sonic and his friends and the entirety of Station Square ever anticipated. It also establishes how much they fear Dr. Robotnik, because just as Sonic CD, which is an absolutely very important example, they realize not only how menacing that motherfucker is, but the fact that they could only trust Sonic and his friends to defeat him. Especially Sonic. They're completely aware just how dangerous Dr. Robotnik is. His intentions are entirely malicious. And this especially applies in Sonic CD. Because in Sonic CD, which is one of the most horrifying installments in the franchise, with the help of Metal Sonic, Dr. Robotnik utilizes time travel to convert various peaceful environments into an absolute dystopian universe. The way that it's portrayed in this game when Sonic fails to change the future back is one of the most disturbingly written things I've seen. The fact that what players see in this game is so fucking unsettling establishes just how diabolical he is. Everything that he's done in this franchise has been nothing but pure malicious intent. And despite the fact that at times the series has been lighthearted, sometimes being very comical with its material, doesn't change just how dangerous Robotnik is. So with knowing all of that vital information ahead of time, at some point watching this movie, I realized that I couldn't take this seriously as a real Sonic film. Despite the glaring visuals and devotion from the cast, along with the non-stop nostalgia trips, I realized that the only way to tolerate anything that I was viewing was to accept this film as a total satire. Because believe me, I knew for a fact, in addition to other stories obviously being told better, these two important characters out of the many in the franchise would have never acted like this. They would have never made me hate them both at the same time. I have never been so fucking annoyed by these characters before. I also know that all this shit that's being presented in front of us is just a fucking mask that hides all of the other horrible flaws beneath the fucking exterior. But the one particular thing out of the many wrongdoings this movie had before and after its fucked up development cycle that left me on the verge of wanting to light this goddamn film on fire and stare at it as it burns into ashes. Aside the fact that the movie blatantly exploits nostalgia, aside the fact that the characters are terribly portrayed in this movie, aside the fact that it's obvious that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing with the story, aside the fact that before this movie was fucking released, it's obvious that they didn't give a single fuck about the source material until this shit became very convenient for the loss of their sales after the massive negative reception for Sonic initially looking like fucking revived roadkill. Aside the fact that after all this goddamn cock teasing throughout this fucking movie, especially that bullshit that they did in the credits, this movie had the balls to imply that it deserves a sequel. In addition to this presumed to be the start of a fucking franchise.
Why would you do that?
Since I'm obviously somebody that gave a shit about the franchise, seeing how it's evolved in the best and worst ways, along with actually being open to watch this fucking garbage, I believe that what I'm about to say will not only be very useful, but insightful for the audiences and wacky team members behind this entire fucking mistake. Sonic the Hedgehog doesn't deserve a sequel. This fucking movie does not need a sequel. This movie did not earn a sequel. I don't know who the fuck thought this would be a great idea, but Sonic in no way has earned the right to have a sequel, because this whole fucking movie is a bunch of fucking disjointed ideas to make a simplistic plot. This whole goddamn story is just taking elements from the original games and molding that shit together to make a comprehensive fucking story, which at the end was nothing more than a fucking disaster. Giving this movie a sequel is like giving Super Mario Brothers an Oscar for best screenplay. Giving this movie a sequel is like giving Uwe Boll a fucking lifetime achievement for the amount of times he has thoroughly fucked nearly every video game license he's touched with his uncleansed dick. Giving this goddamn movie a sequel is like giving Sonic the Hedgehog from 2006 a second chance and apology by labeling it one of the greatest games of all time. Giving Sonic the Hedgehog a sequel is one of the ballsiest decisions I have seen in a long time, next to many other fucking mistakes that many other writers have made when they were developing video game films. The moment that I saw the original trailer for this movie, the one with the original shitty design for Sonic before they changed it, and by change it, I mean conveniently fucking altering it after a complete fucking negative reception, not because they cared about the fans, but obviously because money was involved and they didn't want to fucking forfeit all their sales over a shitty ass design flaw made by a fucking intern that obviously didn't know any better, as well as all of this other bullshit following the movie straight from its fucking early development stages. I knew that I would never enjoy this movie as they wanted me to, because this movie was a fucking mess. As I was watching this movie in theaters, I was trying not to scream out loud. I was being extremely courteous to everyone among me, because this was an experience that I couldn't miss, but it's an experience that I'll never forget, because this is actual evidence that I not only didn't have a pleasant experience, But this film was absolutely overlooked for all of its flaws. Because there's so many things that happens in this movie that could have been easily fucking resolved if Sonic just sat his stupid hairy blue ass the fuck down! Sonic does not know shit about subtlety in this movie. He doesn't know how to keep his fucking mouth shut. He doesn't know how to sit his stupid ass down and follow simple fucking directions. Everything that happens in this movie is his fault. Everything that happens to him, as well as anybody else in his fucking direction in this fucking movie, is his fault. James Marsden's character should have had a stockpile of horse tranquilizer. He should have shot him the moment that he saw him, until this little annoying motherfucker is lying in a pool of his own blood. Because that would have helped. That would have helped so much. That would have kept this fucker quiet throughout the entire movie at the amount of times that Sonic never shut the fuck up. I know that I'm not in charge, but goddammit, if I were responsible for a Sonic installment, I guarantee you that shit would have been more faithful and, dare I say, better than half of the other mediocre fucking installments in the video game series that I have played and witnessed other people realizing were very middling. But that's another topic for another time. I won't pretend that the performances that I saw, despite them not being as faithful as I initially anticipated, were any worse than the writing of this movie. Because if anything, they were elevating it. But until, when, and if that time ever happens, by actually allowing somebody that gives a goddamn to be involved instead of some retarded bimbo from Hollywood or SEGA to be responsible for the next impending video game adaptation disaster. This was the Venturous Gamer, and I hope you've enjoyed your Venturous experience. Somehow, hopefully better than I did when I was forcibly sitting in this theater watching this elongated snuff film.